Hello, everybody. Happy Wednesday afternoon. Hope yours is going well. We've got another Seahawks video to get to today, but first we just hit 2,460 subscribers. I want to give a shout out to all the subscribers, and of course, special tip of the cap goes to the channel members, especially elite channel members Y2KHA, Brandon Mikel, Rip, Scott Todd, Hasher for MVP, VGK Tiger 75, Salacious Crumb, and Ryguy 1218. Alright, so obviously I have an ongoing series on my channel right now, what it's going to cost to keep certain Seahawks players who are going to be free agents shortly. That series is going to continue on for the foreseeable future, but today we're going to take a slight detour and try to step back and size up what we're bringing to the table when it comes to negotiating with these soon-to-be free agents. This is probably something I could have done before I even started making these videos, but regardless, I've seen a lot of people in my chats and my comments lately talking about our salary cap situation and what we can do to get out of it, so I thought I'd go ahead and make a video kind of sizing up the cap situation for the Seahawks going into 2021. So a lot of people have been saying we don't have any cap space this offseason, and that statement is technically true. You can take a look here on Spotrac at the list of teams ranked by cap space. Teams like the Jaguars, the Colts, and the Jets have over 60 million in cap space. They're the top of the list. You can go down and you can see teams like Tampa Bay still have almost 30 million. Miami has 26. Seattle finds themselves right smack dab in the middle of the list. They have $3.6 million in cap space estimated, the league average being basically 3.9. So the Seahawks, in terms of a average, are basically right at the median point. Of all the teams in the league that have positive cap space as of right now, they have the least. But there are currently a lot of teams right now that have negative cap space. You can see starting with teams like the Giants, they have a couple million, they're a couple million over the cap right now, or at least they're expected to be. And you can go through this list, you can see teams like the Steelers and Packers are in trouble. And the team that is in the most trouble by far right now, maybe the most trouble we've ever seen for any team in the salary cap era, we have the New Orleans Saints, who are over $100 million over the cap. And I thought I'd go ahead and talk a little bit about this and exactly what that means in this video. So now that we've gotten the figures out of the way, let's take a look at the little numbers that add up to the big overall number. So here's the 2021 salary cap hit breakdown for the Seattle Seahawks. And it's the guys you would typically expect to be making a lot of money for the most part. And one of the reasons why I made this video is to talk about one of the things that keeps coming up when people are talking about the Seahawks and their salary cap situation this offseason. And it's this idea that the solution to our problems is that Russell Wilson is going to take a pay cut. And I want to kind of make this video to put my foot down on this possibility because I really don't think it's going to happen. And honestly, I don't think that it should happen. If you take a look at what top-level quarterbacks typically get paid, Russell Wilson is in line with those contracts. He did not get a radically bigger contract than the kinds of contracts that you see guys like Aaron Rodgers and Drew Brees and what those guys got and what Dak Prescott is asking for. And if anything, it's actually a good deal smaller than the Patrick Mahomes contract. It's not even comparable. So the way Wilson was playing at the time that he signed that contract was in line with the top quarterbacks in the league. Now, in the last 2+ months of football, he really hasn't played that well, and I'm the first person to call him out for that. But even with those struggles, he still was statistically one of the top quarterbacks in the league last year. And furthermore, I would ask you this: what star player in the history of sports took a pay cut in his prime after negotiating for the monster contract in the first place? The players who do take these pay cuts take them typically when the contract is first signed. So for us to sit here and expect Wilson to solve all these problems by just saying, I want less money, I think this is a big mistake, and I think it's something that we as fans need to stop expecting him to do. He is playing a very violent sport where his career can end at any moment, and he is, even in the best case scenario, constantly getting hit by very big, very strong men. And despite the issues that he had last year, he was very good at it overall. So, yeah, I just wanted to go ahead and kind of put the kibosh on this idea that our problems will be solved when Wilson takes this pay cut. The most I could see is that Wilson maybe restructures some of this money into a future year, but frankly, with the way he played in the second half of 2020, I don't know if I even want him to do that. Do we have a lot of faith right now that Wilson's going to continue to be really good for the next few years? I don't have all the faith in the world right now, so I think Wilson's massive cap hit for 2021 is something we as fans are just going to have to deal with, and we're going to have to find solutions elsewhere. The good news is it's actually really easy to find solutions elsewhere to our salary cap issues. So to those of you out there who are afraid that we're not going to be able to do anything this offseason, or we're going to lose all our players because we don't have cap space, let's take a look at some of the obvious things that we could do to free up some money. Bobby Wagner, we would save almost $10 million if we cut him or trade him. Now, I don't think either of those things will happen, but it's, to me, far more realistic than Russell Wilson giving back any of the contract that he worked so hard to negotiate for a couple years ago. So you can move on from Bobby Wagner and save $9.5 million, almost, or more than $9.5 million. Carlos Dunlap, you can save a full friggin' $14 million by moving on from. You could also save a pretty significant chunk by extending him and moving some of the money into future years, which you can have some leverage to do as long as you're giving him a decent deal. So don't be surprised if we give Dunlap like a 2-year extension that gives him more guaranteed money but less money in 2021. That's all very feasible. Tyler Lockett, you can save $11.5 million by cutting him or trading him, or you can extend him and move some of the money into the future and save, I don't know, maybe $5 or $6 million this year. Now, again, I'm not saying you want to do that, but you can do it, and it makes sense why both players might be okay, player and team would be okay with that. So there's another way to free up money that's very obvious and very doable. Jarron Reed, you can cut him and save $8.5 million. You can trade him and save $8.5 million. You can extend him, which I don't want to do, and push some of that money back. So these are, oh, and of course, Dwayne Brown, maybe the most obvious one of all. You can save $11 million by cutting him, and he may very well take care of this problem himself if he decides to retire in the offseason. We'll have to see what he does. You could extend him, which I definitely don't want to do, but it's on the table. So these 5 players lend us some very clear and obvious ways to make room under the salary cap, and they're all far more realistic than Russell Wilson suddenly deciding that the massive contract that he worked so hard to earn for himself 2 years ago suddenly isn't that interesting to him. I think that this is far more realistic that we move on from or extend one of these 5 players. And there's some other smaller stuff we can do. Cutting Brandon Shell saves almost $3.5 million. There are probably some small-time players that you could get rid of and save a tiny bit of money. Probably not necessarily enough to justify it, in my opinion. But yeah, there are ways for this team to create cap space. And as fans, this is something that I wouldn't bother worrying about. The team knows what their financial situation is. We saw it last year when they decided to let Justin Britt and DJ Fluker go right after the draft, or actually I think during the draft. They know what they have to work with, and they know what they have to do in order to create space. It's the obstacle that most teams, or at least half the teams in the league, have to overcome every offseason, I would say. So, look, Wilson, I find it very hard to believe that he would be open to taking a pay cut for all the reasons I just went into. It just doesn't make any sense to me why he would be greedy and wanting of every single penny he can squeeze out of 2 years ago, and then this year suddenly go, hey, I'm okay with you guys just taking back a bunch of that money for no reason. you know, that contract I worked so hard to negotiate 2 years ago, I don't really care about it. Take my tens of millions of dollars and give me nothing in return for it, just so you might be able to get a slightly better team in 2021 when, as we've seen from experience, there's just as good a chance you go blow it on garbage like Greg Olsen and Jacob Hollister and get nothing out of your tight end position after spending $11 million on it. But yeah, there are other much easier and much more realistic and reasonable ways to create cap. So if you're out there thinking, oh, we can't sign any free agents because we don't have money, or we're going to have to lose all of these free agents because we don't have money, I don't think that's the case. If you take a look at it, there are ways to create cap. You just have to use them. And the ways in which this team will create cap, we don't know exactly what it'll be yet. I just gave you some really good options. And I'm going to go ahead and get out of here at that note. Peace out. Go Hawks. See you guys in stream tonight. And look, you can be worried about the way in which this team will utilize their money. You can be worried about the way in which this team utilizes their draft picks. They've certainly been hit or miss in that area, especially in recent years. But I think that by the end of this offseason, we will have found ways to create a sizable chunk of cap space. And whatever we end up doing this offseason, it won't be for a lack of money. All right, see you guys later.